got you with gloves off, and today we have State Representative Richard Raymond with us, and we're going to talk a little bit about a bunch of different issues that are concerning Texas. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you, brother. Good, man.
Good.
Go Cowboys.
Yeah, go Cowboys.
Next year.
Next year, we'll do it. That name recognition.
Name recognition.
But let's touch base. What's your plans for right now? For 2018.
The Laredo Morning Times asked me the other day what were some of my priorities for 2018, and I said I can give you three. I guess you could call them four. But one, I chair the Human Services Committee, and we have oversight of the Medicaid in Texas, the Medicaid program, and the Child Protective Services program. And so last session we passed a lot of bills to try to reform the Child Protective Services, to try to set up a system where, number one, we recognize when kids are being abused, and we get to that more early so that we can take them out of that situation. And number two,
beautiful.
Bottom line, as Governor Abbott, and I worked a lot with Governor Abbott on this, is that, he said, my bottom line is I don't want any kids to die. Can we set up a system where kids stop dying? And I've said that in our committee hearings, that needs to be a goal. You can't ever get anything perfect, but you can make it better. And when it comes to the safety of kids and them not being beaten to death, them not being tortured to death, them not staying in a situation. I mean, you saw this thing in California that popped up just, yesterday, about this couple that had 12 kids or something, and they had them basically as slaves, and they were torturing them. That's horrible, man. That kind of stuff happens, and what we need to do is continue to set up a system where we recognize that, we stop that, we prevent it. So I want to continue to make sure that the Child Protective Services in Texas strives to be the best in the country, and I want to get to the day where we can look at the end of the year and say, you know what, no kids died this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
None of the kids were tortured to death. Second of all, again, review the Medicaid system. We have a managed care system where basically the insurance companies are now running it, and they were given those contracts because they said, look, we can do this program we can do it better and we can do it for less. Well, you have a lot of people out there now, Republicans and Democrats, that say, wait a minute, they've had it for a number of years now, let's take a close look at it. So my committee, we're reviewing the Medicaid program very thoroughly over these next few months, and we want to make sure, again, that it is efficient, that we're not wasting money, and that the people who are getting these services, which are mostly going to be, of course, kids and senior citizens, disabled people, that it's being done right. Other thing that is very important to me, is a big priority, is I want us to move toward doing something about property tax reform. I sit on the Ways and Means Committee, Paul. The Ways and Means Committee deals with any tax legislation, including property taxes. It's another thing that I've worked with the governor on, lieutenant governor. They're Republicans, I'm a Democrat. But you know what, at the end of the day, property taxes are not about Democrats or Republicans. It's about recognizing that too many people pay too much. And I don't want property taxes to keep going up and going up and going up. So we're looking at, some people won't like it. But most of the people who won't like it are going to be local politicians. They're going to say, whoa, wait a minute. Don't limit our ability to raise taxes. And my point is, I think we have to get to a point where you limit the amount. Well, you put a cap on it, but then also, because you have to give the public the right to speak. So you put a cap on it, but to say, now, if there's something that's that important, that we need more than that, then let the people vote. And if the people want it, then because in the end, they're the ones that are going to benefit, right? But they're the ones that are going to pay for it. So if they say we don't want it, well then they don't get it. But if they say we want it, say okay, you're going to have to pay a little more.
Sure.
And that way you're giving them a voice instead of just automatically taxes can go up 8% every year. They could go up 8% every year without people having any say so. I don't like that. During the session, I supported bringing that down. And now the governor just came out with something, and I've been dealing with him and his office for the last 2-3 months on this issue. And we're in agreement that, as a member of the Ways and Means Committee, as a senior member on there, and as a Democrat, I want to do something to make sure that people, that the local governments get a handle on and pull back on raising property taxes so much. One of the things that I'm glad, and I'm a Democrat, and Sergio knows, man, I'm going to campaign for the Democratic ticket. I always do. But I told the governor's office, I said, look, you have to work with, you got to work with us. You can't, for example, let legislators pass bills that is an unfunded mandate, right? Say, you have to do this at the city, or you have to do this at the county, or you have to do this at the school, and then we don't give you the money to do it. Well, you can't do that. Well, one of the things he came out with, and I'm very happy about this, is said, look, we have to stop unfunded mandates. If the legislature wants something done locally, right, then we in the legislature got to give Laredo the money to do it. If we're going to limit the amount of money that they can tax, taxpayers, which I would like to do, I would like to limit that, then we cannot continue to do unfunded mandates. I'm very happy about that. So we're going to keep working on that. I think tax relief is something that's very important. The other thing, I think, even though it's federal, it affects all of us, the state level, the city level, local, our communities here, and that is NAFTA. It is my goal. I've started talking to members. I'm going to work really hard to try to get every Democrat and every Republican in the House and in the Senate, working. I mean, I hope, and I'm sure Senator Safarini will do this too, but to get more and more Democrats and Republicans to very openly and strongly come out and let President Trump know we have to save NAFTA. We can't kill NAFTA. We can't tear it up. We can't do away with it. It's not the best thing for the country. It's not the best thing for Texas. And it would be devastating for Laredo if NAFTA was done away with.
Many individuals out there do not know what NAFTA is. We here in Laredo, we understand that it's an import-export kind of tax and kind of a treaty that goes on. What exactly is the definition for NAFTA? What are the powers that it gives?
Well, what we did was years ago, and President Clinton is the one that pushed it through, right, is it said, let's open up our borders to trade. So you limit or you cut back the amount of tariffs, the taxes on imports that are coming over here or going over there. And what that did was it allowed, and first of all, it worked both ways. There are a lot of things that we make here in Texas or the U.S. that are shipped into Mexico, that are shipped into Canada. And vice versa. There are many things, of course, in Mexico that are shipped in here. And we benefit from it. The consumer benefits from it because all of a sudden the consumer can pay less for something and their dollar can go further. Now what it's done for us in Laredo, it's created hundreds, probably thousands of jobs, because when you look at the map, right, of Mexico and the United States, when people talk about real estate and the value of real estate, they say location, location, location is very important. Well, when it comes to location, we in Laredo have the best location when it comes to Mexico. Right. That's why we're the busiest trade route, right, in the country. Land port. And when it comes to just trade, period, even though we don't have a water port, we're a busier port than anybody except L.A., the port of L.A., and some days the port of New York. But most of the time we're either two or three in the country, and we don't have ships coming in. We don't have the port of Houston. We don't have the port of New York. We don't have the port of L.A. where they got all these ships coming in. And even though we don't have ships, Paul, we're still on most days the second busiest port of entry in the country. It's amazing, right? So, I think people generally understand that NAFTA has been good for both economies because it's made it's given consumer more buying power, and it has opened up markets for our goods, as it has opened up markets for the country of Mexico to bring in goods over here. And of course, I know there are some people that won't support this, but you've had you've certainly had some U.S. companies that are partnering more with Mexico or with Mexican investors and recognizing and taking advantage of that trade agreement to where U.S. and Mexico and even Canada can work together more in terms of agreements, financial agreements or business agreements.
Those are the pros. What are the cons that you hear out there that you guys is it going to be modified? Well, what cons are the ones that you hear? Negatives?
Well, what President Trump jumps on is he'll say, we're shipping all these jobs away, so we got to do away with the NAFTA so the jobs won't go to Mexico. And I'm going like, dude, if there are jobs that can go to Mexico that used to be here, well, if they can't go to Mexico, they're going to go to China. That's what's going to happen. I mean, you can't. He wants it to be. He talks about this, saying, "Well, I don't want any companies to go set up in Mexico, any companies from the U.S. Or I don't want any jobs that were here to be in Mexico." But the problem is we've become a global economy. We're not a United States economy. We are a global economy. The world is very, very small. I mean, the internet has shown you that whatever this right here that we're doing, they're looking at it. They can look at it in China right now, immediately, instantaneously.
Exactly.
Or Germany, or Japan, you name it. We have become a one world economy. So Mexico is our closest ally. They're our biggest trading partner, very close to it if they're not already. I know they are for Texas. And so if that dynamic, that economic dynamic, is that there may be some jobs that might have been somewhere in the U.S., usually up in the industrial Northwest or Northeast, or Northeast, I guess. Well, now some of those jobs are in Mexico. Well, it's still good overall. It's still better for them to be there than to be in China. Do I wish that we could have, every industry and every job that existed 50 years ago or 40 years ago still be here in the United States? Absolutely. That's not the reality.
Well, I see somebody moving a job from the United States to somewhere else, probably for lesser labor or cheaper labor. Right?
It's usually going to be labor costs.
And the reason I say that is because here we've placed so much restrictions and regulations to labor laws, okay, that people are afraid to actually open up something here. So they're going to look for something that's a little bit more beneficial for them,
Well, they're going to, at the end of the day, they're going to look and see what makes financial sense so that industry can keep going, right? And is that going to mean sometimes that you're going to see some jobs in Mexico instead of here? Absolutely. Now, that balances out with the fact that the consumers in the United States are also going to get those goods at a cheaper cost than if they weren't being made there. So it's a balance. But overall, what we've seen overall is the United States, Mexico has benefited, but the United States has benefited tremendously, sure. Because of NAFTA. That there are a lot of jobs that have been created, and there have been more buying power for the consumer in the U.S. to be able to buy things.
I think a lot of the unions, we're a union-free state, right? But
we're right to work. So yes, and I support unions, man. I said, look, I've supported unions my whole political career,
sure.
Because the unions, there are a lot of good things that union did for this country. Number one, look, I asked people, and I've said this in front of business groups. I said, look, raise your hand if you like 40-hour work weeks. Okay, raise your hand if you like to get paid overtime if you work 50 hours. The hands go up. Raise your hand if you like having weekends off. Raise your hand if little kids can't go into mines when they're 8 or 10 years old because it's too dangerous. Well, labor unions made all those things happen.
Exactly.
You work somewhere, you're working in a company here in the United States, and if you get hurt because something fell on you and your arm breaks or you lose your arm and you can't work anymore, you're going to get compensation because you were working somewhere, something happened, wasn't your fault. You're never going to be able to work again, or you're going to be very limited. Well, labor unions
were the ones that fought for that.
Absolutely. So you have to recognize all the good things that labor unions have brought.
I was in Chicago earlier this year, and their main thing against NAFTA was the trucking. They're stealing our truckers are losing jobs, and we need to regulate that. Maybe this new agreement has to be more regulated or change.
Well, again, I don't think anybody has any problem with 25 years. Let's look. It's been 25 years. Let's look at it. Let's see if there's some things that we can do better. Things change in 25 years. I get that. But, unfortunately, what Trump would talk about is just tearing it up. Worst trade agreement in the history of the world. He said, that's obviously not true. And I really believe this, that if we just changed it from NAFTA agreement, if we just changed it to the Trump NAFTA agreement and didn't change a single word in the agreement, he would say, this is the greatest agreement we've ever had. If you just change the name to Trump, okay? I believe that, man. And so, but my point is this, look, nobody, Mexico, Canada, business groups here in the United States, none of us are against sitting down and trying to see if there's some changes you can make. But this idea about just tearing it up, man, that would be devastating.
Treaties, and the United States has many treaties, and a lot of the treaties the United States walks away from.
Yeah.
We've got treaties since the beginning of this country.
Absolutely.
And the worst ones were with the American Indians. We had treaties left and right, and they were the ones who got lesser of it.
Yeah.
But I think treaties come to the point that when people sit down and for the better interest of everybody.
Yeah.
So maybe this can be torn up and rebuilt again in a different format. And if that's going to happen, then I think everybody should have a little bit more dialogue, right?
Well, I think you have to transit. Look, if you're going to make some changes, or you feel like, again, everybody's open to that. But you can't just end it today because it would be too chaotic. You've got to, it's like saying, oh, well, we need to stop using fossil fuels, or we need to use less fossil fuels. Well, all right, let's everybody stop using gasoline for the next 6 months until we figure out, well, no, that doesn't work. You can't do that.
Let me tell you a perfect example, and we're going to change a little bit. We had a freeze. The electricity went out. Mm-hmm. What happened to everybody? Everybody went crazy.
Yeah.
Food spoiled. Nobody was ready for that.
Right.
We're not ready to all of a sudden just stop something, and
you can't just do it like that.
People would fall apart.
But you can do things
gradually
to make sure that, okay, when we have hard freezes, people don't lose their electricity.
Understand what I'm saying? And it's the same thing if we just abruptly just stop NAFTA from day one. Next week, you know what? At 7 o'clock Monday morning, it's over.
No more NAFTA. It wouldn't work.
So people here would go crazy. I think people here would lose their minds.
Well, and also, again, it would just disrupt the whole United States economy,
So
but anyway,
I think it's an ongoing thing.
That's one of my priorities. Congressman Cuellar, of course, is working hard on it. And one of the things he asked, and I wrote a few months ago, he said, look, if anybody wants to give input. So I wrote a very strong letter talking about why we needed to preserve NAFTA. And I got that to him. And again, what I think now, because I've talked to a lot of my colleagues, like during the session that we had, the legislative session, and, Republicans want to keep NAFTA. Democrats. Now, there's some Democrats that are like, well, I don't know. Maybe we should do more. Actually, what you find out at my level is you have more Democrats that are against NAFTA than the Republicans. So I need the Republicans to come out strongly in favor of NAFTA and to say publicly to the president, we need to keep this. I think, if I remember, I'm pretty sure that Governor Abbott has done that, right? That he has said, look, we need to preserve NAFTA. We want to try to negotiate or see if there's some changes, but not do away with it. And so one of my top priorities is pushing my colleagues, Democrats and Republicans, to coalesce and that we formally approach the president and say, look, we've got to, for the betterment of the country, we have got to make sure that NAFTA survives.
And I'm pretty sure with your energy and the energy of others, I think the resolution would come soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think 2018 something's going to happen.
I think you're right.
I think everybody's going to come. And I think he's a businessman. I don't think he's going to do that.
Well, we hope not, Paul. We hope not.
I have a little faith.
I'm hoping, man. I'm hoping because he's a business guy. If he looks at it from the business perspective, he would know you don't want to tear it up.
Yeah. And if it comes down to negotiating what we need to do, let's sit down on the table. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
And if Mexico wants to do the same thing, and if they have those great negotiators, they have to sit down.
I promise you, Mexico will and Canada will.
And I think that's going to happen. They're our neighbors, even though sometimes our neighbors mess up. And I think Mexico has to start stepping up to the plate.
Yeah.
We're messing up. We're doing this. You know what? Let's take care of our own backyard.
Yeah.
I think Mexico has to step up to the plate now.
Right.
It's your turn to bat.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? You can't cheerlead anymore.
Absolutely. And I from what I've seen, I think that they will absolutely do that.
Let's touch base on, last time we were here, we were talking about 50-50 parenting.
Yeah.
What have you thought about? And I know we've spoken about that, and I know we've understand both issues, all the concerns. What have you?
Well, what I support, and I hope that we can do a better job of this, is this. The court systems, the legal system always talks about this. It's a phrase that they use, in the best interest of the child. And we should always, just like I talked about CPS, Child Protective Services, protecting those children from not being abused and so forth. So when it comes to, let's just say what it is. When you have a marriage, ends up in a divorce, and there are children that were produced in that marriage, you should always think, okay, what's best for this kid?
Of course.
Well, I think generally speaking, people understand what's best for that kid is that they have a father and a mother.
Inputting their lives.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, you just, I've seen it in life, where I have friends whose parents were divorced. I mean, I remember in college, one of my best, I got thrown into a dorm room. One of my best buddies, we became very good friends. We're still very good friends. Brilliant guy, right? His parents got divorced when he was like 10, and he told me about it. We're in college at this point. And it was a very hard deal for him, because in that case, for example, they made him get on the stand.
Sure. Get
on the stand, and here's a very smart guy, very even-tempered, and all that stuff. But here it was, like 10 years later, 8 years later, 9 years later, whatever it is, and he's telling me about it, and it's still bothering him that he had to go through that, where it's like, I got to choose. Well, I think we have to continue to push, and if it takes legislation, then we need to do it, to where we push to where we truly are looking at what is best for that kid, and knowing that what's best for the kid is to have both parents in their life. Right? And so, as much as possible, what you want, when people talk about 50-50, that's what it
Equal
comes down
parenting.
to.
That's basically what you need.
You want parents to both have the chance, and look, let me just say this: if one of the parents is doing something wrong, has done something wrong,
hey, down the scale.
You got to pull that back, man, because you don't want that for that kid. And I don't think anybody's going to argue that.
No.
But if both parents are good parents, they need to get a chance. They need to have a chance to both parent. That child is going to benefit from it. They will benefit.
Let me tell you this: when you go into divorce, and I had one, we had a huge custody battle. It was more the attorneys fighting than we were arguing.
Yeah.
Okay, because we went in there with an agreement, and that agreement was 1 week stay, 50-50. That's we're both parents. Okay, our marriage didn't work. We're both going to raise our kids. And all of a sudden, it went in there, and an attorney jumped in, and all of a sudden, it was all broken up.
Yeah,
I got extended standard. That means I'm the father figure of my children for 4 days out of the month and a couple of hours during the week. Everybody always, and that's the state. And everybody always says, this happens to a child when he comes from a fatherless home. Wait a minute, it's not a fatherless home. The father's still alive.
Right.
Okay? Father's still here.
And wants to be in that child's life.
Understand what I'm saying? So we need to change that for the parents that want to work together.
Absolutely.
Of course, there's deadbeat moms and deadbeat dads and both parents and grandpas and everybody else. Okay?
Absolutely.
Let's get that out of the way. Let's talk about the level-headed ones that want to work together.
Right.
The best feeling in the world was last night. I was about to teach, and I get a call from my ex-wife. And she says, this weekend, you have your kids. I just punished our daughter for misbehaving and not doing her homework and doing this and this. Okay. She's not going to have her phone. Okay, great. Do you agree with it? Fine. Understand? I'm not going to go against that. And I said to myself, it's clicking.
Right.
We need to work with each other. Why? Because we're still the parents.
Right. And to try to do what's best for that kid.
And that's exactly right. So I think there has to be, maybe we can go to Austin, sit down with you and other folks,
Absolutely.
and kind of sit down and talk about what needs to be. And give different ideas.
I think we need to get children. There are groups out there that advocate for children, and I think we got to get them involved.
Sure.
So that they can be, again, reminding us to keep our eyes on the prize, which is
the children.
They're here. We're here. We're pushing for the betterment of that kid.
And I see this a lot. I've been teaching for a while, as we all know, and in the school, and I teach martial arts for those people that don't know me a little bit. And the kids that have a father figure, they come up and shake your hand, look at you in the eye. The kids that do not have a father figure, they're looking around, they don't even say hi. And then later on, you start teaching them manners, and that's what martial arts comes in. You kind of teach them how to be a gentleman or a young lady, and respect, and so on and so forth.
Right.
And you see that right off the bat as soon as they walk in the door.
Interesting. That you can see that right away.
And the kid comes up, how are you doing? He might be shy, but he's looking. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I know. I mean, and my kids will shake your hand. So the other ones turn around, they don't even say. And you're like, I'm not saying that moms are bad, because number one, moms, I love my mother, and we're not talking about machismo, blah, 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 no. And I say a good alpha male loves the women, loves their mother, respects them, will cry with a little girl, your daughter. Yeah.
Understand? If a fellow man has some problems, we're going to be there. Hey, brother, we need to go forward.
Yeah.
Let's get this. That's what I think an alpha is.
Yeah.
Understand? And that's what I think we need more of here in the United States.
I agree. So I hope that I'm committed to working on that. Absolutely, because again, chairing this committee where I see what's going on with the child protective system, one of the things that you see is, these kids were not getting the attention. They were being abused. They weren't being protected.
We have to protect them. That's what we have.
Absolutely.
To me, our prize in America is our children.
Yeah.
And everything that we do, we have to give them the liberties to go forward in education, go forward in safety, and protect them. To me, that's the ultimate goal.
Well, we're in agreement. All right.
So let's see if we all can get together, and
absolutely.
If we have to go to Austin, I'll see
if
I can get some group of people.
We can do the meeting up there and bring in some different folks and
from different areas.
Yeah,
I think it'd be great. Yeah. I think it'd be awesome. Awesome. I think it'd be a good start. What else do we have?
Well, I mean, I think that it's a political year, right? We've got elections going on. It's national elections. We don't have the presidential election going on, but I think everybody's following the U.S. House, the U.S. Senate. In both instances, of course, you have majority Republicans. But what you're hearing more and more is that it's going to get closer. Maybe the Democrats actually take over. If they do, if we get the majority in the U.S. House, obviously that's very good for Congressman Cuellar, because I think he'll become a chairman of at least a subcommittee, maybe a subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee, which are all very, very powerful, because he's on the Appropriations Committee already. So, what happens now? I mean, Henry doesn't have I think he doesn't have an opponent, so he's getting reelected. Is
he in re-election now?
Yes, sir. He's up for re-election, and so Congressman Cuellar will get reelected, and but if these other elections around the country and these other states end up switching over to where they change the majority to the Democrats, and all of a sudden our congressman from Laredo, Texas, is going to be even more powerful. He's going to be in a very, very powerful position. So that's going to be interesting to watch, to see how, even though Trump is not on the ballot, him being in the White House will impact the elections. Let me tell you, Paul, we look at history, and this is true, interesting, for Democrats or Republicans, it doesn't matter. But when somebody gets elected to the White House, they get in, and the first election is going to be 2 years later, right? He's not on the ballot. But you have all the members of Congress that are on the ballot, and all these senators are on the ballot. And over the last 100 years, almost every time that first election after somebody gets into the White House, his party loses seats. Almost every time, with only, I think, 2 exceptions. One during FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, when, the Depression, and he got in there, I think he gained seats in his first 2 years. Lyndon Johnson, when he was president, I think he gained seats. But almost every election, that first election, 2 years after they get in the White House, their party is going to lose seats, anywhere from 20 to 50. Well, if the Democrats win 24 more seats, I think it's 24, then they're going to get the majority. So it's going to be interesting, because a lot of people, it's just the way Americans are. Even though the president is not on the ballot, his party's on the ballot. And so they're going to go and they're going to go, wait a minute. I'll give you an example. I didn't even know about this. This week, I think it was on Tuesday, because on Wednesday, one of my buddies calls me and he says, did you hear about the election and the special election in Wisconsin? I said, no. There was a state Senate seat, and the senator resigned to take some other job. They had a special election. Well, that district had Romney carried it for president, McCain carried it for president, Bush carried it for president, Trump carried it for president, on average, like by 15 points. In this special election Tuesday, the Democrat won by like 8 points. Okay? That could be an indication of okay, the voters are going, wait a minute, got to put a hold on Trump here, man. We got to balance it out. One of the things that I've seen, this is very interesting when you think about it, most of the time that Bill Clinton was president, the House of Representatives was a majority of Republicans. That was the biggest economic growth we had. The balancing the budget for the first time. We had a surplus. We had welfare reforms. We had NAFTA. All these things, because you had a Democrat in the White House, you had a Republican majority. My point is that you had a balance. It's kind of like the American people said, wait a minute, let's keep one of them one party, the other one another party, and then they're going to balance out. And that was what happened during the Clinton years. The best arguably the best years we've had in a long, long time. And it was that you had one party in the White House and one party in the Congress. It may be that Americans end up doing that again this year. Again, as far as we're concerned here, we're going to elect Henry Quaid. So we're not going to impact that. But in Wisconsin and Florida and all these other places, people may be going, we got to balance this thing out, man. Or they may be saying, we don't want to do away with NAFTA, so we need to tell Trump, hey, whoa.
I don't think. I think there's going to come to an agreement.
Well, I hope so.
I think,
but my point is, other things. The president's in the news every day, right? And so people are aware, and I'm just telling you.
But every president's in the news every day. If you really look at it, Obama was in the news every day.
Well, yeah, but Obama wasn't sending out tweets.
You know what I'm saying? You got Bill Clinton was in the news for 20-year anniversary.
But he
with Monica.
But he wasn't sending out tweets.
8 years.
Hey. Well, Trump's in the news for dating a porn star.
Anyway, it happens. They're all human. You can't blame that.
But my point is this: that almost every president, that first election, their party loses a bunch of seats, right? If that happens, it's going to affect Laredo because Henry Quaid is going to be even more powerful.
How about local elections? What do you think is going to happen here?
I think you're going to have some really hot races, man. County commissioner races, county judge races, tax assessor, collector. What else do we have? Treasurer. We got a constable. Or let's see, JP.
We got some JPs.
JP races. So you're going to have a lot of stuff going on. You're going to have a lot of people being interviewed here, Paul.
And you have a lot. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting because now you see a Republican running in a very long time.
Yeah.
Here in Laredo.
Yeah. No, I got a Republican running against me, and I already told him campaigns can go one of two ways. You can talk about issues and have a dialogue and a discussion. It's like the very first time I ran. The guy, this was when I had my rural district. I was representing 6 counties that surround Webb County. And the guy that was in there, he had just gotten in, but they changed up the district. So the lady who was my state rep wasn't running anymore, so I decided to run. Well, this guy started, saying some things about me that were just dumb, just personal and stupid. So I called him. I said, hey, man, look, I want to talk about the issues, man. You want to attack me and say dumb things? I could do the same thing with you. But I don't want to do that. Let's talk about issues, man. No, that's me too. That's what I want to do.
And so that's the way it is. You stood up to that, and people backed down.
I won the race by 67%.
And
okay,
that's
so so in this case, I've told the guys running against me. I said, hey, look, man, let's talk about issues. You're a Republican. I'm a Democrat. Let's talk about NAFTA. Let's talk about the wall. Let's talk about Medicaid. Let's talk about Homeland Security. Let's talk about all those things and see how you feel about it, how I feel about it. That's what I want to do. All right, let's do it, So we'll see.
You're absolutely. Well, let's see what happens. Hopefully it's a clean race, and I think both you're respectable. I've never met him. So I think it's going to be interesting.
I don't know him real well, but he was appointed to a board by Governor Perry many years ago. And so when he was on the board, he would call me and say, hey, can you look at this legislation? And I would. I'd talk to him. Man, okay, let me look at it. He had some ideas. So that's the way I operate. You call me, I'm going to work with you. I'm going to try to work with you for sure. And so I dealt with him a little bit back then, but I can't say that I know him well because I don't.
Right. Let's touch base on Homeland Security. What do you see Homeland Security is here towards Laredo? Do we think we're doing a good job? Or because we have excellent agents. I think they're doing.
Absolutely.
What else do we need to?
I think Laredo sector, or whatever it's formally called, I think they're doing a great job here. I think we're a good example that when it comes to Homeland Security, well, first of all, I don't consider Mexico this big Homeland Security threat. Okay, we all know that the drug trade is going on. Wish it wasn't. That's going on, and we also need to remember, because people forget this, drugs come up from Mexico and other countries, not just Mexico.
Understood.
They're coming here because the United States citizens want to use them. And that's the problem. That's a real big problem, because if people in the United States did not use drugs, those guys wouldn't bring them in here, right? And so that's what makes it difficult. On the part when the president talks about the drugs coming in, we got to do more. Look, what we need to do more of is we got to make sure that people in the United States, where we have these rehab programs work.
Yes.
And we need to recognize that we need to try to get people earlier when they start using drugs. If we get them early,
preventive. I've always said preventive.
Absolutely.
And we have to start now in grade school.
Absolutely.
And we have to do programs in there towards mentoring those kids not to do that.
Absolutely. I think, Paul, it's so important that, math is important, reading is important, geography is important, world history, all that stuff's important. But what's also really important is that we start from the very beginning telling kids, don't use drugs. This is going to ruin your life. It's going to ruin your body, whatever. We have to start that from the beginning, because if we do that, if we do a better job of that, then as they grow older, they become teenagers, they become 20s, 30s, 40s, then there'll be fewer people that have the drug addictions, right? And that have those, that are making those demands. And that's a very important part to me of how you solve the drug problem. Now, obviously, we got to do everything we can to stop what's coming in. Absolutely. But in terms of homeland security, terrorists coming in and so forth, I don't really see that we have terrorists coming in from Mexico.
I don't think we're going to have terrorists like what we saw in 9/11.
Yeah.
Or a big army coming across, or a group of paramilitary group that's going to come.
Right.
That's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, you're going up against a big dog, and that's the United States.
Right.
Plain and simple. We still are number one.
Right.
But we might hit something with technology.
Yeah.
We saw that with the freeze.
Yeah.
But what happens if they literally attack one of the grids? Can people really survive?
That's an excellent point.
And I think, to me, that's what we're going to be hitting.
Dude, that's why I think we haven't done enough. This government hasn't done enough, is to try to recognize in working, what I think the president ought to be talking more about is, how do we work with the energy industry, with companies, anybody that is doing something that is going to affect a lot of people, right? How do we make sure, how do we work with them to make sure that they have the secure systems that are necessary so that it's harder for a hacker who wants to terrorize us, right? And
there's some smart people out there. I mean, you got some guys out there that are geniuses behind a computer.
Absolutely.
And they can go in there and do everything else. Let's just look at that. Let's say they shut off the grid here in Laredo.
Yeah.
Okay? Your food's going to spoil. Yeah. If you do not have cash in your pocket, everybody carries a little plastic card around. That's not going to work.
Right.
Banks are going to be down.
Right.
Hospitals are going to be down.
All of it.
So the first thing that's going to happen is what? Riots and looting in the stores. So
I don't even want to think. I don't know what would happen. I don't even want to think about it.
That's going to be a horrible. That's going to be a horrible consequence. How many of you can actually say, pick up? I know you and I.
Yeah.
How many of us can say, pick up and take your family and go out there? You know what? We're going to be out here at the ranch and we're going to live off here. Many of us here in Laredo might be able to do that.
Well, you're going to remember this.
You understand what I'm saying?
That a lot of us, I guess you did, I wouldn't talk about this, but I know my wife and I did, in December of 1999, Y2K.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a bunch of bottles of 5-gallon bottles of water. We got extra food that were not perishable. All this stuff. Went and got some cash from the bank.
And it's not being paranoid. It's not paranoia. It's not. People make fun of the preppers. Oh no, that guy's crazy. There's something about it.
Yeah.
How many of you got what I call the oh shit bag? I got a little backpack there and I'm gone.
Yeah.
And my kids have one, and if that needs to happen, how many of us can be prepared for that? Because if you stay here, go to HEB, see when there's no lights.
Well,
what's going to happen?
To your point, we need to do more to try to protect ourselves from that kind of terrorism.
Right.
So the Homeland Security, as far as Laredo on the border, I mean, look, I think they do a great job here. Yeah. And I think that we need to be looking harder at how we keep the homeland secure from those kinds of attacks.
To me, I think that's where it's going to come from. Everything else about these guys going to fall out, and no. Are we going to have your gunmen and your crazies all the time?
Right.
We've had that ever since.
Absolutely.
Plain simple,
Absolutely.
And we've dealt with it fine. but I think we have to be a little bit more prepared on something else with that issue.
Well, on high tech, on the high tech aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's where it's coming.
Yeah, it's some little guy in a room like this with a bunch of wires that hey man, I can shut down Laredo.
Yeah, or anywhere.
Boom.
That's it.
Or Houston, or
and it doesn't have to be from here in the United States.
Well, you remember, what? When we were kids, I mean, I'm trying to remember. I was maybe 16 or something. New York City had a big blackout, and that was horrible, man. Con Ed, Consolidated Edison, that's the name of the company up there. And they ended up finding that it was a guy that did it on purpose. That a guy that had worked for them and was mad. I don't know what he was mad about. And he, yes, man. Yeah, no, but I mean, that get back people. Somebody used to write an article about that because I remember when that happened.
Yeah, people are going to go nuts. I mean, they went nuts. 2 days without lights here in heat.
When it was cold, and so I mean,
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
hey, understandably, I don't think everybody turned on the electricity for it to blow out the grid.
Right.
I think there's more to it than that. But
well, that's what we need to find out. And when I was asked, I said, look, we got to find out exactly what happened, so that we can make sure it doesn't happen again. Bottom line.
Right after 9/11, we used to have the Border Patrol parked at our water plants. Remember?
Yeah, that's true. That's true, man.
And everywhere else they had everywhere else they were.
Well, because remember we started thinking about, because we have we're an oil and gas state, and there's so many pipelines in Texas, right? And somebody said, well, what if they just, thousands of miles of pipeline. Some guy goes and puts a bomb there and just blows it up. I mean, that it could affect thousands of people, man. Thousands of people. And water sources, yes. So they were watching the water plants because somebody could go drop something in there, You
remember that, but people forget that.
Give you another one, man. Give you another one that you're going to remember, too. You still may not remember, Sergio, but Tylenol.
Yeah.
You know what? Now when you get milk,
anything.
You know why? You know why all that happened? Because some guy, somebody, I'm not going to say guy, somebody that they never ever caught, went and got some Tylenol. They went up to the store, they had some Tylenol boxes. They opened them, they put some poison in those Tylenol pills.
When was that? That was in the 80s?
Man, no, it was in the
70s,
man.
The 70s, no?
Yeah, dude.
I remember that when they came out there and it...
Seattle. It was Seattle. Yeah.
And everybody, Tylenol was
all of a sudden it was
cyanide. Everybody was...
Yeah, they're like the company. It's amazing that they survived. Yeah. But because of that, we now have those seals on everything. But that was somebody that just said, you know what, I'm going to go put some poison on some of these. And the thing that really bugs me is they never caught him. Never caught him. I mean, I'm glad.
There's a lot of clever, malicious people out there, cruel. Yeah.
Well,
and that unfortunately, those crazies are out there.
They're sick, man. Something's wrong with them.
And we have to stop them. If something goes on, we have to.
They're sick. They're sick individuals. That's the reality. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, it's going to be an interesting year. I also, I look forward to August preseason with the Cowboys, the beginning of the run. We're going to run all the way to the Super Bowl.
Here's I'll buy a jersey if they do that.
Hey man, I have like 4. You want to use one of mine?
But what I was going to tell you, one thing we spoke about the other day, and that was taking care of kids within gyms, within martial arts schools, and everything else.
Absolutely. Tell me, because you brought it up, and it's a wonderful, and we're gonna follow up on this, brother.
And there's a lot of martial arts schools. People understand that are basically cheap methods for daycares. Okay, they'll pay $250, $300.
See, I didn't know. Tell people so they know.
And there's martial arts schools that we've been finding out that there's been a lot of molestation, a lot of rape, a lot of abuse.
No, but some of them, they'll pick them up right after school, right?
And they'll pick up the child after school. They bring them to their school, and they stay with them to 6, 7 o'clock until the parents pick them up. Unfortunately, I do Savate, and we're underneath USA Savate, and everybody that's a coach in USA Savate, and like USA Boxing, USA Wrestling, we're underneath the Department of Licensing and Regulation.
Yeah.
And Dickie Cole just left. Now it's Greg Hernandez, And we have to do a background check.
Right.
But all these other martial arts schools don't. Is there any way we can regulate that? How can we make it? If you teach kids in a martial arts school, the instructors that are teaching, they need, just for safety for the kids, period. Because number one, as a martial artist and as an instructor, and I've been teaching since 90, you always protect the child and the women and the men that go in there, and you teach them safety. That's number one priority. Mm-hmm. So this is all about safety. How can we do a background check, or they need a license? Because they're more like kindergartens and anything else now.
Well, look, I just hadn't thought about it till you told me. And once you told me, and I've been thinking about it now, well, we have got to look at it and say, all right, is this now something where we have to look at getting background checks? Because they are dealing with a lot of young children.
Of course.
They are dealing with picking them up in many instances right after school. Mm-hmm. They are in effect a
target.
They're in effect a child care facility. That's what they are. And when you look at child care facilities that are licensed by the state, in this case they're licensed by the committee that I chair, the Health and Human Services Committee, so it's right up my alley, is that, they have to have background checks.
Sure.
Right? And this, I mean, there's some regulation because you got to get your license and all, but you're telling me they don't have to get background checks, and they're dealing with all these little kids.
You see the
by the way, my brother-in-law, I'm going to ask him, my brother-in-law is, he's Taekwondo, so he's like a 3rd degree black belt. He's been an instructor.
Here?
No, he's in Little Rock.
In Little Rock. I think he'll be a good... excuse me for interrupting. Yeah. And the reason I say this is because in martial arts, people can all of a sudden come out and say, I'm a 10th degree black belt. I learned it from my Chinese instructor who lived next door, and he was a ninja. And they tell you these big stories, and they're teaching. And you're like, when you look at them, they're as false as a $3 bill.
Yeah.
Understand?
Yeah.
For those that know about fighting.
Yeah.
So it's not really regulated.
Right.
There's associations like under Savat, we're underneath for the sport and so on and so forth. We fall underneath the boxing commission.
Right.
But karate doesn't.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Judo falls under the Wrestling Act. So there's a lot of little things in there that we need to actually kind of sit down and...
I think we got to look at that, man. I think we absolutely...
Because you've got folks teaching out of their garage, which is fine. You got folks teaching at rec centers.
Well, the point, but the point is this: if somebody's going to be charging you, basically to have your kids there, they're going to have to get a license. They got to be looked at, and if they're going to be alone with kids, I mean, I just think that I had never heard this till you brought it up. I promise you, we're going to look at it. I will ask the questions now. Hey, what are we? And I'm going to say this was brought to my attention that a lot of these martial arts schools. They got kids that are going in there, and none of those guys are having to do background checks, and they're having all these, and they're gonna be instances where they're alone with kids, obviously.
Obviously, not only that, they take them to tournaments out of state, sometimes out of state, but travel. Big red flags.
Well, let me tell you. I mean, look.
And this was brought up to me, by a great legend, woman, great martial artist. Her name's Joy Torveville, who was a legend. And she goes, Paul, look at this. Paul, look at this. And I was just looking at every single thing that she was sending me about this instructor got caught with molestation. This one got in charge for this. This one got in charge. And we had one here in Laredo last year. And so my eyes opened. I said, wait a minute, we need to do something about this now.
Well, I'm glad you brought it, and I promise you that's something that you may end up having to go testify.
We'll go.
Talk about it.
And if you need
because you can say, look, we do this. We have to do background checks. We're okay with it. We know it's for the safety of the child.
Of course.
I mean, look, my boys were real involved in Boy Scouts. Boy Scout rule: if you're a kid, if you're a Boy Scout, you cannot be there with one adult. Got to be 2 adults there. You cannot be alone with a kid.
That's the way it is. And doors are open. There's schools that all of a sudden close the doors and the parents can't look. Wait a minute, what's that? Everything needs to be open right up.
Yeah.
Right
so I'm really glad that you brought this up. It's right. Like I said, I told you that one of my priorities this year was to continue to look at how we improve the child protective system. This is going to be something that we can. To my knowledge, nobody's brought this up before. I promise you, we're going to be looking at it now and see what we got to do.
Okay,
absolutely.
We'll work on that. I think that'll be great. I think also.
Good to see you, man.
Anything else?
Just, Cowboy Nation, man. Don't lose faith. Don't lose faith. I mean, we're still kind of represented a little bit out there because the Minnesota Vikings, the head coach, he was the Dallas Cowboy defensive coordinator for a while. So I think we got to be for the Vikings at this point, you know.
I like the Cowboys because they have one Lone Star, and that's for the Lone Star of Texas.
That's
That's
baby.
the way I look at it. But
we're America's team, baby, where we have the Texas Lone Star.
But I look at it this way. I think they need to get the priorities straight. I think they need to. I'm not much of football. I stopped watching football.
I want Tony Romo to be our coach, man. I'm sorry, Jason. Don't get mad at me, man. No, you're doing a great job. Jason Garrett's doing a great job. I still wish Tony was one of the Cowboys. Let me put it that way. I got to meet him. What a great guy. Oh, my gosh. Great one?
Bill Bates. Remember Bill Bates?
Oh, man. Of course, man. Billy Bates, number 40, man. I'm not
going
to forget.
Excellent individual.
No, man. I finally went up to the Star. The Star is up in Frisco. It's just north of Dallas, where the Cowboys have their training facility. Their offices, and man, anybody can go. It's like, I forget, $25 or something for the tour, but it's so cool because you get to see everything, and it is just. And for those of us that have been around forever, man, and following Cowboys since I was this big, you're looking at all the history there, and it is so cool to see that history.
Let me tell you something. I was like you, and then I lived in Irving. I lived in Las Colinas for so many years. I never went to one Cowboy game. And now they tell me, you want to go? And I go, I didn't go because of the traffic. I didn't want to get involved in traffic. So now I would rather watch it at home, or at the restaurant, and I'll sit back and watch it. So I was like,
you can't beat it at home because you're going to see it like 10 times. They're going to do the replays and all the great plays. They're going to show them again. So plus you can pause. Now almost everybody, you can pause it in the middle of the game. You got to go. You're doing a carne. You got to go flip the carne, whatever. You can put it on pause and you don't miss anything. Because remember before, it's like, oh, voy a voltear la carne. And then you come in, hey, what did I miss? No.
Now you can
pause it. Mira, ustedes se van a quedar aquí. Y voy a voltear la carne. Sit down, pause. I'll be back in a minute. And then they'll get up and go use the bathroom while you go turn the meat, right? And then you come back. You turn it back on, and the game keeps going, baby.
Let's change it more to a Laredo, because we got great boxers here.
Yeah.
Who do you want, Canelo or Triple G?
Well, of course I want Canelo. But I think Triple G won last time.
You think so?
Look, I'm not a professional judge, but yes, I think Triple G won that fight. He didn't run away with it. You know what I'm saying?
I think Canelo needs to speed up a little bit more. I think they're both excellent.
They are going to fight again, right?
Yeah.
Man, so that next fight's going to be really good. This is what I would love, but they don't do it anymore because, Mayweather, one of his legacies of Mayweather is going to be this, that he's taught all these boxers how not to fight. Like, how to stay away, right? So they don't have points because they didn't hit you. And so it's not like Rocky Marciano would go, let's fight, baby.
Yeah, two different boxers. You had a fighter and a boxer. And
so Canelo, the trainers, they're pulling him back, man.
No, let him go.
They're pulling him back. Triple G's like, let's fight. And Canelo, you let Canelo fight, I think he'll knock out Triple G. I think Canelo's stronger. But they're not letting him fight, dude.
Yeah,
they're making him do the Mayweather, que esto, que el otro. Come on,
Mayweather
man.
beat Rocky Marciano. Rocky Marciano had 49-0 now. And now
doesn't matter, man. Okay, who would?
But to me, Marciano is
no,
is
man.
the best.
You can't. And plus, if they were both here together, but Marciano was a heavyweight, so he would have killed Mayweather with one punch. Because Mayweather dancing around, he would have just got him and then just boom.
The Brockton blockbuster. I still watch those films.
Oh man,
I'll put them in there, and I'll.
It's great to watch some of those.
Just the
fights.
way he used to train. He used to do 24 rounds inside a pool.
I didn't know that, man. Can you imagine?
24 rounds inside a pool.
No wonder the dude was
non-stop.
Awesome, man. Okay. And that was sad that he got killed in a plane crash, man. Golly. But anyway, so that's what I don't like about Canelo is I think when he started, he was fighting. And now they're making him fight like Mayweather. And that's not boxing, man. If you want to win, okay, I guess if it's about the business part of it, like winning and getting the money, okay, bottom line. But if it's about being remembered as a great fighter, and I have a lot of friends in Mexico, man. They even complain about it. Déjalo que
pelee. Now I remember one of the best fights between a Mexican American and a Mexicano. It was Carvajal with Chiquita Gonzalez. I don't know if you remember that fight.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
And Carvajal won, and those were the great
Well, I remember even going back further. Another one was Oscar de la Hoya and Cesar Chavez. Julio Cesar Chavez. When they first fought, one of my buddies went. It was in Vegas, and one of my buddies went. He didn't get into the fight because it was very expensive, but he went. He wanted to be in Vegas. No, hombre, that was a fight, and De La Hoya won, right? And so, but he said there were Mexicans and Mexican Americans.
Yeah, and they were fighting against each other.
No, hombre, in the streets, man, because they started fighting, and my buddy has a Western belt and belt buckle. He said if he took off, he's like, they're like coming
it's
out.
It's a difference, Mexicano and Mexican American, and when I saw another one, great. I had just come back from France, and I clicked on, it was Tuesday night fights, and I clicked on, it was De La Hoya fighting Maromero Páez.
Oh, yeah.
And he knocked out Maromero Páez. Maromero Páez was laying down for 15 minutes, and I'm like, he's going to become a world champion. I think it was his fifth or sixth pro bout. He just knocked him out cold. I mean, he was out.
Man, I met De La Hoya. We had him at the Capitol one day. I don't know who brought him. Nicest guy, dude.
Yeah.
Nicest guy in the world, man. We're about the same size, but I think he punches harder than I do. But interesting. We're about the same size, and we took a picture together. And then when I got the picture later, even though when I was standing there we were about the same size, well, when you get the picture, you look at me, and my head is this big, and you look at him, and his head is that big. It's like his head was a lot bigger than mine. I don't know what the deal is, if that's a function of all the fighting. I don't know, but it's real obvious. Like, our bodies are almost the same size, but his head is a lot bigger than mine. Maybe they can take more punches. I don't know. But he was a really, really good, and I think you've seen that. I mean, the guy is a really, really good guy.
And I'm very good friends with Fernando Vargas.
Oh, really?
And he's doing great work with the kids over in Los Angeles and so on and so forth. Yeah. And he's still out there. He teaches them Golden Gloves, and he goes out there and he's pushing out those gyms. And it's proud that when you see these boxers come back as world champions or contenders, and they go back into the community to help out the community.
Yeah.
We have Orlando now doing the same thing, which is wonderful.
Absolutely. And we were very proud of, obviously proud of the Canizales, period. So, no, it's interesting, man. I'm looking for. Do we know when the fight's going to be? Canelo and Triple G?
No, they just came out that they were going to sign the contract. So probably either Cinco de Mayo or September 16 or one of those.
Well, I mean, he'll Triple G will do whenever you want to do it. He doesn't care. But and he's hard scrabble, man. He grew up. I mean, Canelo, they weren't rich, but this guy grew up hard scrabble de madre, man. Triple G. And so
I think they're both going to do well.
I hope to let them fight. I think I'm telling you, and I believe this, if they fight, I think Canelo's going to win. I think Canelo may knock him out. He's got a strong punch, man. Strong punch.
All righty. I guess we're out of my time. Thank you for being here.
Good to see you.
We look forward to working together, and we look forward to seeing.
We're going to follow up on that, and I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. I really do.
Thank you again. Anything else you want to tell the people?
No, just ya saben, go Cowboys. My sign off.
All righty, guys. Until next time, here goes up. Be safe and stay warm, and let's bring the pets inside.